We're going to read Why Are Right Wing Conspiracies So Obsessed with Pedophilia? The story is the same from the daycare panics to QAnon. It's not really about the kids, it's about fears of a changing social order. So this was found in Mother Jones, uh, which
In
I'm not.
2019.
Yes, it's a bit dated, but it's really interesting in terms of covering movements like QAnon and getting to the sort of like root of why they exist. Because like the assumption is just that they're like what is it like they just have like irrational conspiracy theories, and there's a large extent to which they are irrational. But the sort of like idea being put forward by Ali Breland here is that underlying these sort of like child panics, like fear about children being uh, predated upon in like school or other things, tends to revolve around, or at least come out of the history of daycares being a thing and women going to work and like that kind of stuff, right? And so the idea here is that it's kind of like a reaction, a conservative reaction to women entering the workforce, and it's patriarchy trying to reassert itself. So I think it'll be an interesting article. I have read it a while ago, but we are going to read it today. When dudes, when dudes you went to middle school with wouldn't stop sharing pictures of pregnant children, fun time to be on social media. What are you talking about? Pictures of pregnant children.
The Save the Children or whatever.
Oh, I never had them sharing
Um,
pictures of pregnant children, but you it sounded like you were going to say something again.
yes, I forgot though. Oh yeah, QAnon in 2019, just like a totally different beast. Like
Well,
this is pre-pandemic QAnon,
I mean that's the weird thing that's going to go on. Well, not weird, but like the interesting about this article, because its main focus is QAnon, because QAnon was the big thing at this point. QAnon has kind of like, they've gone through Protestant Reformation and they're starting to split, right? Or I guess more a more apt metaphor would they've had their Millerite end date. So like the millenarian like cults that existed that thought the world was going to end in the 1800s and split and form like the Seventh Day Adventists and all this fun stuff. It's more like that. QAnon has gone that kind of splitting. So this is like predates that, but the point of it predating it as actually makes sense in the sense that like these go beyond QAnon, right? They have to do with the fact of uh, patriarchy trying to reassert itself by making it so like you're a bad mother for letting your child go to like daycare is essentially what we're gonna get at. So QAnon went to sleep. They never go to sleep. They just change their name and they're still going. So let's dig it into it. Dig right into it. And granted, I realized as I'm reading this first thing, if hearing about child predation bothers you, this might aspects of this might get heavy as we're immediately going to get right into it. So here we go. The children were being sodomized in secret underground tunnels. Their captors drank blood in front of them and staged satanic ritual sacrifices. Sometimes the kids were filmed for pornographic purposes. In total, some several hundred children were subjected to this treatment, and it all happened in the middle of a safe neighborhood where crimes were not supposed to happen, let alone such unspeakable and horrific ones. Not that anyone else witnessed the abuse, nor was there any clear evidence that it was actually happening. Probably a very important thing to have. But people were sure it was real. It made too much sense, they all agreed. Everything fell into place, one of them said. Hundreds, maybe thousands of otherwise normal, relatively well-adjusted Americans truly believed that a massive ring of occultist pedophiles was operating right under everyone's nose. You can, and I don't know how much the article is going to go into it, but if any of you have watched like the documentaries on like the West Memphis 3 and stuff like this, a lot of this is going to feel vaguely familiar because similar things happened in those cases as well. And I think we even touched on facilitated communication as well, which has a touch of this as well, where not to get too far into it, but basically there was this technique where a facilitator was using an autistic child's like hand to type out messages, claiming that it was coming from the autistic child, but it was coming from them, and would just tell tales about like rampant sexual abuse and stuff like this. And so a lot of people were like arrested and tried for like predation when like it was really a person controlling an autistic person to say stuff, which is really disgusting. But that happened. I think even to this day, there's still people in prison who were convicted for charges based on facilitated communication. I also think there's still people in prison that had to do with the Satanic Panic. So these things that we're going to talk about, there's still people in prison for these crimes that never existed. Tons of fun. Our judicial system works wonders.
Uh-huh.
The Mcmartin preschool scandal of the 1980s was a sort of analog version of the more recent Pizzagate, part of a lurid and misbegotten moral panic about subterranean child abuse. Even though the supposed crimes unfolded thousands of miles and several decades apart, under very different circumstances, the two conspiracy theories share the same rough contours. The Mcmartin Saga, which began in 1983 with accusations made by one boy's mother, came to encompass fantastical claims about a massive pedophile ring lurking beneath a preschool in Manhattan Beach, California. Pizzagate was concocted during the 2016 presidential campaign and alleged that prominent figures in the Democratic Party were running a child sex ring in tunnels beneath the Comet Ping Pong Pizzeria in a residential Washington, D.C. neighborhood. Both spun off into new theories amid a full-on national hysteria. Mcmartin spawned a series of daycare conspiracies, while Pizzagate has led to QAnon, an even wilder conspiracy theory that postulates that President Donald Trump is on the verge of arresting a throng of liberal elites for facilitating and participating in a sprawling child sex ring. Both drew on natural fears about child safety and supercharged them into national phenomenon, with real-world ramifications. Both, of course, were fiction. Or were they? Oh, someone redeemed. You redeemed streamer shits. All right, I'm down for that.
Yes, I did.
Two cars. Did this
To
happen?
protect your eyes.
Two cars. Did this happen in Canada? There was a case in Canada that around this time, I can't remember its name. There's actually a really good CBC podcast that did a series on it. And I think it was in Saskatchewan, if I'm not mistaken. But very similar things. There's also a great book by, what's his name? Lawrence Wright. Lawrence Wright's probably most known for writing the book Going Clear, which was then made into a documentary film about the Church of Scientology. Also a great book and a great film. But Lawrence Wright, his very first book, I think it's his first book. Let me get the title of it. It was about a teacher. No, a parent. It was basically a parent who his daughter underwent like hypnotherapy, and then she claimed that there was like that her dad was a part of some sort of like satanic cult and is like working with the school board and was just like hurting a ton of people. So apparently, so it wasn't his first book, but it was called Remembering Satan, a tragic case of recovered memory. So you're also, this is interesting because it's going to tie into like our previous article about the UFOs as well, because what we learned there was that like the X-Files was deep into this shit. And the X-Files was deep into this stuff as well. So you had both like the recovered memory stuff was a huge plot point, especially to the first season of the X-Files. So like Fox Mulder was like undergoing like hypnotherapy to like uncover what happened to his sister, and like then it being tied to like it was aliens that like abducted his sister. And so a lot of these cases too, like there was therapies back in the 80s, or at least they were treated more legitimate by wider public, even though even psychologists back then were like hypnotherapy is bullshit. But a lot of like people took advantage of these people and like gave them various like hypnotherapies, and so you had people engaging in, I think what like Freud called transference, which was the idea that they were like feeding the therapist what they wanted to hear. And so a lot of these therapists would purposefully try to like engage in like question begging questions to try to like elicit responses from them. And so these people, in order to like please their therapist, would tell them all about these like satanic cult rituals that were happening. And then these therapists would write books and tell the public, and it like fed into this like panic, right? And so Lawrence Wright's book, Remembering Satan, is really good, which is all about that. And I will say, I don't know if he's going to specify in this article, but he does say both, of course, were fictions. And it's also like worth acknowledging that, like, one of the reasons we know that these were fictions, just like right off the top, is that in all of these sort of like hypnosis therapy sessions, or even when these witnesses come forward, they talk about how there was like these huge satanic rituals. And so like babies were being like born and then mutilated and then buried, and right, like, so there would be mass graves of just like hundreds of victims. And it's weird because, for one, these hundreds of victims that are apparently were murdered and sacrificed like show up nowhere in records, and none of their bodies have ever been found. And it's a similar thing with QAnon when they purport. I remember there was like one moment where they talked about how like they called them like mole children because they've been in these like basements for so long that they were gonna emerge and be like these mole people, and like all the QAnon people during the Save the Children thing were going to adopt all these mole people. And again, you would think if these people were really being harvested, there would be way more documentation that this many children were missing. Like, you would need millions of children just like missing. Tukar says, I think with X-Files, they ended up with the recovered memories being extremely faulty. Yeah, I mean, they at least played into like whether or not it's true or not. And I think part of that was for the cinematic aspect of it. But I think in the end, don't they sort of become true? Wasn't his sister really, she really was abducted? I'm not sure, but they at least played with it because, for dramatic tension. It's a TV show. I wish we should do like watch parties for the X-Files. I don't know how to do that, but that would be fun. The Mole Children conspiracy theory.
I'd be down for that.
Yeah, that would be fun. I wonder if we could. I don't know how to do it yet, but I think there's like a way to do that. I don't know if I have to become partner or something, and then like host watch parties with. Because I don't even know if Discord will allow me to watch something, unless like I have it on DVD. I don't know. We'll figure it out. The Mole Children, this is Grimpy Coffee. The Mole Children conspiracy theory, born out of taking LSD and playing Resident Evil 7 too much. Probably. I think there's a lot of retcons with the abduction. Yeah. But like, it's complicated because I'll have to rewatch the series. I remember because like one of the retcons was that like his sister showed up again. But then it turned out that it wasn't really a sister, it was a clone, and like, yeah. Yeah. I love Two Cars just said the exact same thing that I said. I remember Samantha was a full-grown adult, but was that a clone? It was a clone. Yeah. So I don't know, it was like a retcon, but then they like, it turned out that it was like it wasn't a retcon because it just was like more alien conspiracy stuff. But alright, I'll continue here. Conspiracies centering on the vulnerability of children are neither new nor distinctly American. Wild claims of Jews killing Christian children and using their blood in rituals, the blood libel, date back to at least the 12th century and have popped up every so often since then. And long before that, Christians were suspected of performing similar rites. Hurting children is one of the worst things you can say someone is doing. It's an easy way to demonize your enemies, says Catherine Olmsted, a professor of history at the University of California, Davis, who has studied conspiracy theories. Why do child abuse conspiracies explode into public consciousness at certain moments? Explanations offered for the peculiar resonance of Pizzagate and QAnon tend to focus on pathologies in the media ecosystem: epistemic bubbles, polarization, the unruly growth of social media. But years before the fracturing of mass culture and the dawn of Reddit and 4chan, the Mcmartin accusations fed a national spectacle during which scores of people were wrongly accused of sex crimes against children. That is in fact true. What is happening? The interesting, I do recommend. I've already recommended it, but like all the stuff about the West Memphis 3 is really good. But that one's interesting because the people who were being charged were themselves like children, like they were teenagers, but they were charged with like an occult killing of 3 children. The continuities between the Mcmartin case and Pizzagate suggest a broader explanation for pedophile conspiracies. They aren't the residue of malfunctions in our media culture. They're an outgrowth of the normal workings of reactionary politics. Which is the main thrust of this article. Author Richard Beck, in We Believe the Children, A Moral Panic in the 1980s, locates the roots of the Mcmartin conspiracy theory in the social progress of the previous decade, particularly in the gains won by women. In the 80s, you had a strong, vicious anti-feminist backlash that helped conspiracies take hold. I mean, I would argue that this hasn't stopped since the 80s, but Simone agrees with me. She's in the mood. She's just going to yell at me this whole time, Simone? Everyone hears you.
She wants... She needs attention. You're talking to the computer, not to her.
Yeah, but she's just gonna jump up and like knock things over. Yes. Go see your mom. Don't you love your mom too? Beck tells me in the 1970s, middle and upper middle class women had started to enter the full-time workforce instead of being homemakers. This was the dawn of what the economist Claudia Golden has termed the quiet revolution. Thanks in part to expanding reproductive freedom, career horizons had widened sufficiently by the end of the 1970s for women to become, in Golden's words, active participants who bargain somewhat effectively in the household and the labor market. They are now forming their identities outside of the context of the family and household. Notice as well, like we cover a lot of reactionaries on this channel. And what is like the main thing that they talk about every single fucking time? The family. Like if you allow trans people to exist, that somehow that's destroying the family, or being a demasculated male is ruining the family and all that fun shit.
They need their trad wives.
Yeah. There was that reminds me, there was someone on Twitter today that was like posted some it was a talk given by Ann Coulter, basically saying that women should no longer have the right to vote. And this person like retweeted and was like, yeah, women shouldn't have the right to vote. They were like in support of it. And it was like another woman, and it's just like conservatism is rotting people's brains. But,
yep.
But that's like the thing. It's like for some reason it's like that notion of the patriarchy of like having a hierarchical family structure with like one man at the head of the family is so deep rooted in a lot of conservative thinking that it's just annoying to have to like shake at this thing and hope that it stops. Because it should be obvious that you have whatever family you want. Enjoy life. Go out there and explore all the options. Have fun, you know? The patriarchal family was under siege, as conservatives saw it, and daycare centers had become the physical representation of the social forces bedeviling them. You had this Reagan-driven conservative resurgence, Beck says, and daycare was seen as at least suspicious, if not an actively maligned force of feminism. Daycare held a prominent place in right-wing demonology. As far back as the 1960s, conservatives were warning darkly that childcare was a communist plot to destroy the traditional family. Almost like they're saying the same thing about trans people today. Being trans is a communist plot to destroy the family. Which it is, to be honest, and I'm here for it.
It is.
Oh, so it's okay to joke about not allowing straight old men to vote, but not okay to agree with the fascists? What?
Yes.
Oh, two guys. A sociologist, Jill Quadagno, writes in The Color of Welfare, in 1971, President Richard Nixon vetoed the Comprehensive Child Development Act, which would have established a national daycare system. In his veto message, Nixon used the red-baiting language urged upon him by his special assistant, Pat Buchanan, saying the program would have committed the vast moral authority of the national government to the side of communal approaches to child rearing against the family-centered approach. That's wild. You know what? Like this reminds me of too. Like this is in an episode that hasn't been, or hasn't been released now. In one of the episodes we recorded recently of the podcast, there was this guy named Lee Humphreys on, who was talking about like during the election, like the liberals were constantly talking about daycare, but like ignored all these other issues that like he thought were more important. And I reflected on our podcast that it's interesting that like he focused on daycare. And now that I'm reading this again, I'm like, oh yeah, because like I guess it's been a long running history of them hating daycare specifically. So they're still doing it. They're still doing it. In a decade of rising divorce rates, at least conspiracism and reactionary social conservatism could enjoy a happy marriage. By the time Judy Johnson came forward in 1983 with allegations that a teacher at the Mcmartin preschool had molested her child, the country had been primed to assume the worst by more than a decade of childcare fearmongering. I wonder how it's going to be with like Clinton. Is it just like everyone was thinking the worst of Clinton that it was?
I wonder also, at what point did like the dumb rumors about people putting drugs or razor blades in Halloween candy and whatever come from? Because I feel like it must have been from this time. Like,
I remember all through growing up. So I want to say it's got to be late 80s, early 90s when that stuff is happening.
yeah.
Which would
And I wonder if
this
that's
time period.
still really a thing. I don't know.
It's kind of a thing now. I mean, it's mostly a meme now. I saw somebody posting around recently. It was like it was some famous painting. It was like, oh no, somebody stuck this famous painting in my Snickers bar, and then they photoshopped the painting like on the Snickers bar.
Yeah, I saw a Hieronymus Bosch version of that one,
Nice.
and I considered sending it to you, but then I got lazy.
Yeah. This was not Hieronymus Bosch. It was somebody had a. I feel like it was some. It was a communist relating painting in some way, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's also a fascinating thing. Like recently, the Halloween talk has always been the conservatives talking about how uh, somehow handing out candy is socialist or something like this, or like how they shouldn't hand out candy
Yeah,
to socialists. Or they get like really weird about it.
no free
Yeah.
handouts.
I've seen that go around on Fox News, or you have people like making a point where it's like, if you're a socialist, you all have to share these tiny chocolates that are over here. But if you support capitalism, you get one of the big bars because capitalism is all about the biggest chocolate bars.
Uh-huh. That's why all the chocolate's made with slavery.
Yeah. Yes.
Um,
Way to put a damper on the whole season. Yeah.
I gotcha.
I mean, but let's be real. It's not just chocolate. It's pretty much all year round. Whenever you eat something with palm oil, you're pretty much contributing to that. When the kids
Yeah, that too.
when the kids get home, they take 90% of candy as a tax. Socialism. Yeah, exactly. I'll continue. Certainly, it wasn't just the movement of women into the workplace that created the conditions for a reactionary panic. There were other cultural forces at work. The anti rape campaign of the 1970s, historian Philip Jenkins writes in Moral Panic, had formulated the concepts and vocabulary that would become integral to child protection ideology. In particular, a refusal to disbelieve victims. The repressed memory movement of that era had created a therapeutic consensus surrounding kids' claims of molestation. Be willing to believe the unbelievable, as the self help book The Courage to Heal put it. Believe the survivor. No one fantasizes about abuse. And the anti cult movement of the late 1970s had raised the specter of satanic cabals engaging in human sacrifice and other sinister behavior. Now, I share a lot of what's going on here is like very legitimate, but I worry that at least this section, or at least this paragraph, might lean a little too close to sort of like disbelieving victims. Where, I mean, when it's with children, it's interesting. That's where things get a lot more complicated because the idea that somehow children uh, are impervious to things like transference or the stuff I said before, where they say things in order because they think that that's what the doctor or whatever wants them to hear. I mean, this stuff even happens a lot with police in interview, or not interviews, but like interrogations with subjects, where they want to get the person to confess to a crime. They'll put them in a situation where they'll like entice confessions out of people, right? And so the idea is like it's about the situation. But like when women come out like in the Me Too movement, believe them. Like there's no reason for you not to believe them in those cases. To me, it's more the contextual thing. When it has to do with a therapist like coercing a response from someone, that's where things get really iffy and not great.
The framing of like the anti-cult stuff there was kind of interesting too, because it's like this is the 70s. There were a bunch of cults.
Yeah.
Isn't that when Scientology started? That's when you get like Jim Jones and you get like all of these like actually fucked up cults, and then
I mean, Scientology was in
but
the 50s, but
I guess
like,
maybe movement. Yeah, but like for the anti-cult stuff presumably came as a result of there being cults.
yeah.
But then also, like, I guess maybe framing it into a movement then automatically makes you look for cults where they might not exist.
I mean, this also happened at a time where like sexual harassment in the workplace was finally becoming a thing. And so you did have a lot of some of my own research in doing my master's thesis. I was reading like feminist theories of moral luck, and a lot of the older research came out of like this field of dealing with people with like repressed memories and stuff like this. And you had a lot of women for good reason, like early feminists that really liked this idea of the uh, that a lot of the like this abuse and assault was repressed, and really like it's not repressed in the way that they thought that it was. Really, it was like afraid of further abuse. I think why a lot of people weren't coming forward, but like they had sort of like theorized in their heads that it had to do with like the Freudian theory that somehow people were like repressing their abuse deep down inside or whatnot, and that, like there's an extent to which that's not really how it works. Most people don't like repress the thing to the point where they don't experience, which is why like you have things like post-traumatic stress disorder where people like relive their trauma and stuff like this. So it's like in a weird way this whole theory of these cults and like people coming out of cults, or even like people at school saying that they were in these like satanic cults, and like you had to go to the therapist to somehow recover this memory that somehow disappeared in your brain. most of that was based on complete nonsense, but you can kind of see where it was coming from at the time. But now we know better, or at least I would say I hope we know better.
Yeah. Now we know differently.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say the sad thing is there's still like hypnotherapists and other shit like that still around. So. Beck likens conspiracy theories to parables. The ones that stick are those that most effectively validate a group's anxieties, with blame assigned to outsiders. In a 2017 paper on Pizzagate and pedophile conspiracies, psychology professor Jim Klein, now at Northern Marianas College, argues that conspiracy theories are born during times of turmoil and uncertainty. In an interview, Klein goes further. Social turmoil can overwhelm critical thinking. It makes us get beyond what is logically possible. We go into this state of hysteria and we let that overwhelm ourselves. So this is a neat People's Weekly from 1990, the Mcmartin Nightmare. America's most notorious child sex abuse trial gave no one justice. The defendants are acquitted but ruined. The children feel betrayed. Parents are outraged. Hear what went wrong. Look at the graffiti on the Ray will die. Wow. The Mcmartin accusations were a vivid demonstration of the rot in the American social structure, as perceived by conservatives. Perhaps inevitably, the claims metastasized. Now it was hundreds of children who had been assaulted and subjected to satanic rituals. And now, instead of just one Mcmartin teacher, there was an entire sex ring involved. One boy told of adults in masks and black robes dancing and moaning, of live rabbits chopped to bits by candlelight. California's nightmare nursery, People magazine called it, but soon the case began to fall apart. The stories of abuse turned out to have been coaxed out of children by way of dubious and leading questioning. Judy Johnson, who made the initial accusations that her son had been molested, was found to be a paranoid schizophrenic. In 1986, a district attorney dropped charges. At one point, there had been 208 counts in all, against all but two of the original defendants. A pair of trials ended in 1990 with the juries deadlocking on some charges and acquitting on the others. After 7 years and $15 million in prosecution costs, the remaining charges were dropped. It's wild. And as I said, like this is the one case, this Mcmartin case, but there was cases like the one from the Lawrence Wright book where that person was still in jail. I think they're still in jail. And that guy's head's like really messed up because he had his daughter undergo hypnotherapy and accuse him of all kinds of shitty behaviors. And after being interrogated by the police for like ever, he was just like, I don't know, did I do it? I don't even know what the hell's going on anymore. And that guy is still in jail.
Fuck.
Yeah. However flimsy its premises, the case whipped up a national panic. In 1985, a teacher's aide in Massachusetts was wrongly convicted of molesting 3, 4, and 5-year-old boys and girls. The prosecutor had told the jury that a gay man working in a daycare was like a chocoholic in a candy store. So, I mean, it also is clearly feeding into panics around gay people as well. Around that time, employees at Bronx State... Yep. Yeah. I mean, but it's also like there's that sort of like... you have that even today where any sort of like male teacher for young kids is often perceived as being like an abuser. Where it's like many young men can also be interested in teaching young kids just as women as well. And there's also like, and where I think the aspects of like homophobia come into that as well, because it's often seen as like, well, any man who wants to teach and educate young children must be like a demasculated man in some capacity. I think the funny thing with that too is I wouldn't say I received a lot of that, but like I got feelings, vibes from that when I used to do like my developmental research and would like go into daycares of just like certain parents being like, why, man, are you interested in like this research? Where I could see some of my colleagues who were more women presenting, the parents would be more than willing to let them do research on their kids. You know, there was like a definite like
Yeah.
more of a trust for them than for me. And it didn't. The other part that
Mhm.
didn't matter about that too is that like I did have the beard at one point, and I thought like maybe I should shave it off. If that was like the contributing factor, still didn't matter. Still didn't matter. In fact, I got the vibe in a weird way the kids like the beard more. Around that time, employees at Bronx daycare centers were arrested for allegedly sexually abusing children. 5 men were sentenced before all ultimately saw their convictions overturned. Liberals certainly participated in the hysteria because, of course, they did. Liberals always going along for the hysteria. Hello, Hildebeest. We're dealing with a little bit more of a heavier topic. We're talking about child sex panics and QAnon and stuff like this, Pizzagate and whatnot. And it was nice to see you in the raid today. I just happened to be sitting in Tina's chat when I didn't even realize we were going to be raiding you. But fun times. Kids probably have less interactions with male presenting folks, so it's a novelty. Possibly. I think where we were at as well, you had a lot of like business oriented people, so I think a lot of their dads did not have beards. That was part of it. You know, because you got to shave to be a business person. I don't know.
Yeah. Business equals hairless.
I don't know. They're the ones who business people are way more picky about what the dress code has to be. You know.
Yeah. No, like I was being serious.
Yeah. Oh no, I got the gist of the joke is like how ridiculous that is. That somehow hair is the problem.
I mean, it's a social signifier. It means that you have time to either pay for grooming or, take your time out of your day to groom. And then also, like, that you care to spend that time doing that. It's the same thing with like gym stuff where it's like, like, oh wow, it doesn't actually mean anything. Half the time you're not even like functionally stronger,
Yeah.
but you spend a bunch of hours lifting stuff, so your arms are big or whatever else. And
Yeah, for me the gym is always
yeah,
like
fuck the
yeah.
Romans. You're right, Nom.
For me the gym is always a matter of not to like get like the big muscles. It's just like sometimes I definitely let it go for a bit and then be like, maybe I don't want to like be huffing for air while climbing upstairs or whatever. Health is a good way to keep it fit. Blame the Romans for making it a requirement for the army as a show of professionalism, for there it spread. To be honest, I spend more time grooming my hair now that it's long than I ever did before. Listen, at least you have hair. Like there's no groom in this, all right? This mine's already gone. Love to show up just in time to hear Vienno cover the praxis of getting swole. All right, getting swole is anti-praxis. Yeah, but I think Tim was just saying the general
Yes.
concept.
Derailing trains, that's praxis.
Yeah. Getting swole to derail trains. No?
You don't need to be that swole to operate a lift jack.
Yeah, I'm just saying. What if you get swole enough just to push the train?
You get swole enough and you learn on the treadmill how to run fast enough to be caught up with the moving train.
Got to do a leftist version of those Good Men Project cringy posters. Tim, you just showed up, so you're more of a psychology person. or psychology adjacent, or whatever you want to call it, we're talking about repressed memories somewhat, and how that's kind of bullshit in the Satanic Panic era stuff. So my strength is for reappropriating the means of production. Reappropriate. Anyways, I will continue. Liberals certainly participated in the hysteria. Gloria Steinman donated money to the Mcmartin investigation. She did? Holy cow. But by and large, it was a reactionary phenomenon. What drove the panic, Beck says, wasn't just the sense that children were being harmed, it's that families were being harmed.
Wasn't Steinem the one that worked with the CIA?
I mean, Gloria Steinman's
Or was that Paglia?
I mean, they probably both did.
Yeah, all the fucking second wave feminists did like horrific things in terms of like serving American government interests.
Would Paglia even be a second wave feminist? I just always known her as a contrarian. Like I feel like even she was against feminism back then. She's always just been weird.
I don't know. I'd put her in that camp.
Fair. For anyone who knows, if you want to know who Paglia is, she's the one who was in the interview with Jordan Peterson when he started talking about how like he can't control crazy women or something like this. I don't know how to deal with this female insanity. That was with Paglia. In 2016, 3 decades after the Mcmartin trial, WikiLeaks, in cahoots with Russian hackers, published the private emails of top Hillary Clinton advisor John Podesta. In one, Podesta is invited to a fundraiser at Comet Ping Pong. Amateur internet sleuths blew it up into a conspiracy theory about child sex ring. The pedophiles communicated in code. Hot dog meant young boy. Cheese meant little girl. Sauce meant orgy. The theory was easily debunked. In part because it was largely just made up. Like it was, I think it started even like as a joke, and then like other people took it and ran with it. Joke in the sense of just like I don't think the initial people posting about it were taking it serious, but then other people took it serious. Eventually, it was abandoned by the high-profile internet figures who'd initially given it oxygen. Okay, so although, no, I think they might be referring to people like Mike Cernovich, who has since backed off of it, or even Jack Posobiec, who both of them were like big into it. But not before Pizzagate was, as it was immediately dubbed, had spilled over into reality. In December 2016, a 28-year-old man named Edgar Madison Welsh, having driven from North Carolina to Washington, D.C., fired an assault rifle inside Comet in a bid to rescue the children he thought were locked away there. No one was hurt. Welsh was sentenced to 4 years in prison. I'm pretty sure as well that he was an InfoWars listener. And, yeah. InfoWars. Inspiring nice things all the time. She is exceedingly liberal. Puma. I believe cheese pizza was short for child porn on 48 or on 8chan. Fair enough. I would not be surprised if Jimmy's Door still privately believes it. In Pizzagate? Was Door Pizzagate? I know he was big into like the Seth Rich stuff, but I didn't know he went all the way to Pizzagate. As Andrew Torres likes to point out, he was demanding access to the pizzeria's basement, which did not exist. Right, Welsh wanted into the basement, and it didn't exist. Another reason why these conspiracies are not true is that the places that a lot of people say exist end up not actually being. The QAnon conspiracy picked up where Pizzagate left off, alleging that the illiberal elite's pedophile rings extended way beyond one restaurant, and that it is only a matter of time before Trump arrests Podesta, Clinton, and other Democratic power brokers for their crimes. All of this was fueled by an anonymous internet poster dubbed Q, who claims to be a government insider. With Pizzagate and QAnon, the molesters have changed from daycare workers to the liberal elite, and the politics behind the theories now are more explicitly spelled out. But the general context is more or less the same. Conservative retrenchment after a period of progressive social gains. If women's entry into the workplace in the latter half of the 20th century triggered deep anxieties about the decay of traditional gender roles and the family unit. In the 21st century, it was the same-sex marriage, growing acceptance of transgender rights, and the seeming cultural hegemony of a social justice agenda. Q found that fear, says Travis View, a conspiracy theory researcher and host of the Q Anonymous podcast. QAnon Anonymous is a fantastic podcast, by the way. You should check that out. But yes, I mean, we already sort of touched on it, but like, yes, there's. I mean, but even so, it seems less about the daycare. But as we pointed out, the one example of a Canadian on our podcast was like getting angry at the fact that Trudeau would not talk about Afghanistan, but somehow was constantly talking about daycare and saw that as like a negative. So, daycare is still an issue, especially in the Canadian context, because I think the Liberal government made it an issue. And what I mean by that is not a negative. I mean, it's Trudeau and fuck Trudeau. But like him pitching daycare, great idea. Love it in principle. Sure. Fun times. But like, I think because they were pushing that as like part of their platform, it allowed the conservatives in our country to fearmonger about it. Where I don't know if you're getting the same sort of thing. You might find, I wonder as well, like in the American context, if a lot of what Biden wants to get done in the quote unquote like Build Back Better thing, if he actually gets that whole thing passed, you might start having those fears again, because there's like child tax credits and other things in that to help people pay for things like daycare. Jimmy Dore has waffled on it. He also spread Hillary having Parkinson's and other conspiracy theories that I cannot recall. Yeah, I do remember him spreading the Seth Rich one, which was that Seth Rich apparently was the source that leaked the emails to WikiLeaks. So like that, I guess that's like where it probably gets touched with QAnon, because the Pizzagate stuff came from those the emails that were leaked with WikiLeaks. And Jimmy Dore speculated that the Hillary Clinton campaign killed Seth Rich, because Seth Rich did in fact die, but it turns out was killed for reasons unrelated to stealing of emails, and in fact never stole the emails in the first place. It's that meme where the worst person you know makes a great point. Heartbreak. Trudeau and daycare. Yeah. Well, I mean, in the Canadian context, he was campaigning on an issue that like he could have gotten done in the past 10 years and just didn't. So it was like super fucking frustrating. That and like what they always do is they go, oh, we can't get it done because we have to wait for the provinces to do stuff. So if you're campaigning on it anyways, like you know in like in the things that you've said prior to this election, you couldn't get it done because of the provinces. So how are you magically going to get it done if you get reelected? Where we all know that they could just do it if they wanted to fucking do it, and they don't do it. Seth Rich conspiracy reinforces the leaks. Why would they kill someone for it? Must reveal satanic pizza code. Yeah, exactly. All right. While Q directly never touches on trans rights or those sorts of things, there is a great deal of anxiety on those sorts of issues, he says, referring to the QAnon community at large. This is Travis View talking. They're concerned generally on the sort of acceptance of trans people and the over-sexualization of children. I mean, you saw that definitely with that movie's Cuties. That was like a huge thing that the right was panicking over. On the matter of transgender rights, the conspiracists are aligned with normal conservative politics. From the state legislatures to the White House, Republicans have made considerable hay out of attacking and overturning various protections that had been extended
3
to
months.
trans people.
We're going steady now.
Woo! Hello, Muta Supreme. Thank you for the sub. We are going steady. I am going to have to remake the sub thing because it's not playing for whatever reason. So I'm going to try to like... I didn't have time to do it today, but I will fix my sub thing so that you would get a display. But I guess like in response, I could just like dance or something.
Yeah. Do a dance.
I did. I
Do a
wiggled. I
dance.
wiggled slightly. That was the extent of my dance.
Oh.
So that's my gift to
Gotta
you,
do more.
Muta. Do more. Muta, you tell me what you want from me since you subbed. And yeah, we'll go from there. I'm not going to listen to Vienno. Vienno over here telling me to dance.
Ooh.
I'm not your monkey, Vienno.
I know what Muto wants.
Nam says, let's not forget the NDP had pushed for federal daycare, both federally and provincial, long before Trudeau. That is also true. Just sadly, the NDP has not been in federal government yet to attempt it, or not attempt it. The dance was great. See, look at that. Thank you, Muta. Thank you.
Muta, come on.
Bieno.
Muta, you're capable of demanding more from people. Don't have to accept the bare minimum.
Oh my god. It's alright. Interruptions are alright, Muta. It's all good. Conspiracy theories of all kinds draw their energy from social anxieties. Occasionally, there is some real basis for the theories. In her book, Republic of Lies, American Conspiracy Theorists and Their Surprising Rise to Power, Anna Merlan details the belief among Black New Orleanians after Hurricane Katrina that the city's levees hadn't failed on their own. They had been bombed intentionally to destroy the poor parts of New Orleans. The theory was rooted in a real event, a 1927 decision to dynamite levees outside of New Orleans. The logic there being that they were going to flood low-lying areas and save the city itself. Merlan said in an interview with Mother Jones, Becca Andrews, it created a lingering sense of suspicion that maybe the government would do this again. So this is Travis View. Travis View points out that the concerns about elites preying on children isn't baseless either. The core of elements of the systematic elite child abuse theories, they aren't crazy, he says. There are instances of wealthy, powerful abusing children. Wealthy, powerful people abusing children, I think is what I'm supposed to say there. Because I don't think the abused children are wealthy, powerful. Anyways, there are instances of wealthy, powerful people abusing children and other people covering it up. Jeffrey Epstein, the Catholic Church. People have the sense that elites can commit horrifying crimes and get away with them. The Epstein Arrest earlier this month. Remember when we lived in simpler times? The Epstein Arrest earlier this month has done much to ratify the QAnon worldview. This is just the beginning, declared QAnon.
I was only 2019?
Yeah.
It feels so long
is
ago.
Officially here. It does. It feels like a millennia ago when that happened. We are living in the... I think Liz Crokin also, the fun thing about her, and I feel like this happened after this 2019 thing too, is she had part of her finger bitten off by a shark.
Hell yeah.
She still is a QAnoner, I think. I haven't heard much about her in a while though. Epstein. Says the line part. Epstein didn't kill himself. Yay. 2019, back in the olden days. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always find that like the funniest, or not, if anything, the saddest part is all these people who like perceive some sort of like satanic panic over there that has to do with the more secular aspects of society, of like daycares and like schools. I mean, like the interesting thing there is you have like more publicly regulated systems in place. Whereas something like the Catholic Church was able to like sexually abuse many children over a long period of time. And then like rather than deal with the people who were doing the abuse, just sent them around to different areas. Next part here. And thus does the legitimate concern about elite predation and impunity get woven into a demeaning and dangerous social crusade. The storm, cited by Crokin, also known as the Great Awakening, is part of the vivid eschatology that QAnon adherents share with traditional conservative cultural worldviews, one in which judgment is at last rendered against liberals and the nuclear family is restored to its proper place. I mean, you hear that a lot. That pretty much is like the conservative mindset too. Like, there's going to be this magic. The silent majority will rise up and return secular feminist society back to the way that it should be. One thing they often talk about after the storm is that they imagine that the economy will be restored so that a single income can support a family again, View says. They imagine traditional gender roles and norms will be upheld and how children are raised will return to what, It used to be. This is a picture of Ted Gunderson, who's like showing like, look, they're hiding children in basements from the Mcmartin case. Ugh. I have seen Jimmy Savile from the UK cited by QAnon believers in both Canada and the US. Yes, Jimmy Savile is another person who abused a lot of children. Donald Trump is the Kwisatz Hotter. I don't know who this is, Tim. Kwisatz Haderach? Father, the sleeper has awoken. A lot of people are saying this. It's going to be tremendous. These are Dune references.
Yeah. It's like the Dune prophet person, whatever that is Paul it, or is it Paul's kid who finds the baby worms and becomes a giant worm?
I can't tell if this is a blasphemous statement that I'm going to say, but I have not read or watched or ingested a single piece of Dune content in my entire life. So I don't know. What do you say? Should I go into this one having not read or watched anything, or should I go back and watch some David Lynch first so I have a comparison? I know they're not like connected. It's a different rendering, but I don't know. If you read the last book, it matters. It's neither.
The last book being the third or the sixth, or
I just
some
want to
of
know.
his son's bullshit ones, or
I'm a fan of David Lynch's work, so should I watch Lynch or not? No, just the new one. Don't let Lynch hijack.
No, don't watch the Lynch one.
Okay.
I couldn't get through it. It was so fucking boring.
Well, I mean, but Lynch's stuff is always kind of boring, but I'm a weird person and enjoy his films.
No, like this was a whole level of boring. Like I literally could not sit through it and have it playing in the background. Like that's how.
There's a. I know this is like derailing a little bit, but I don't mind going off on a little tangent. There was an amazing movie by Lynch called Inland Empire, and there's like a segment in that film that like feels completely unrelated from the rest of the film, because I mean like most of his films are just like there's a bunch of nonsense that like people like try to read in deeper meanings to like constantly, but like the one scene is just like this rabbit family, then the wife is like ironing her clothes, and like the husband rabbit like comes home and it's just like, hello honey, and then all of a sudden there's like canned like audience laughter that plays. And it's just like totally disconnected from everything, and it's amazing. It's amazing. So I wonder if like I actually will appreciate the Lynchian Dune, but I don't know. I love the Lynch movie as a guilty pleasure, but it's very thematically mismatched to the subject matter. Okay, fair enough.
You might.
But yeah, but what about the new one? I'm getting some vibes that people enjoy it as well, so like I don't know. Dune content.
It sounds decent, but also like you can tell that it's directed by a Quebecois person because it's pretty Islamophobic.
Okay,
like in ways, because you know, like the books themselves. Oh yeah, it's rough. But also like invented for this movie, it seems, because I don't remember them doing anything like it in the book, and the books were Orientalist as hell.
Yeah,
but like. Yeah, I don't know. It's just very like, huh?
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people too, Tim. That it's like it feels incomplete because it's like specifically supposed to be part 1 of 2. So, yeah, interesting. Well, maybe I'll wait till number 2 comes out then, and then digest them in an entirety. I don't know. We shall continue though. Although you can keep chatting about Dune in the chat if you want to. The differences between the pedophile conspiracies of the 1980s and those of today are telling in their own way. There's the matter of scale. The pedophile witch hunt of the 80s managed to mobilize entire institutions, with much of the media uncritically amplifying its falsehoods, and police taking action based on shoddy non-evidence. Lives were ruined around the country. But except for some reckless far-right pundits and websites, the media hasn't taken the claims of Pizzagate and QAnon seriously. I mean, aside from like OAN and like what's the other one? One American News and Newsmax, I think was the other one. Earnest conversations about the conspiracies are limited to online image boards and social media. And like the Epoch Times and like there's other shit that's out there that's doing it. But yeah, like I do agree that it hasn't really captured the mainstream publications, but it's also like a different media atmosphere. Like it's hard to like assess the difference here. It's like, okay, like maybe we don't have Barbara Walters or like Oprah Winfrey like promoting this shit, but like anyone who goes onto Facebook fucking knows what this is, you know?
Yeah, true. Just before you start the next paragraph, if anybody in chat's read all 6 Dune books, does anybody remember what the fuck was up with like the secret Jews?
Secret Jews?
Because I don't think they showed up until like the 5th or 6th book, where it was like, whoa, the Jews, after
Are they
dealing with
literally
anti-Semitism, were like, we're just gonna go into hiding. And I don't remember what else came of that, but I feel like they might have been controlling stuff. What the fuck was up with that? Can somebody just like give me a brief rundown of what the secret Jews were up to based on like you guys' memory? Because I don't know. I've pushed so much of those books out of my mind, apparently.
So is this what are they really called the secret Jews? Or are you just
No, it just
saying
turns out that they
metaphorically?
are secret Jews.
Weird.
No, they are literally the Jewish people, but
So the space Jews from Spirit Science, was that from Dune?
I don't understand this reference, but maybe.
Spirit Science is a really shitty YouTube channel that like covers like weird esoteric shit. And in one of like his bigger videos, he tried to connect like Atlantis to, or like that Atlantis was like a society that was built by aliens, and those aliens were Jewish, and the descendants of Atlantis are what we currently call Jews. So like Jews are really space aliens. They call that book
Yeah, I don't
Jews in
think that's
Space in my
it.
Dune meme group.
Um, yeah, Tim said the sons of Israel who fled into space and they then come back as a lineage of humans untainted by the collective race memory conditioning that the God Emperor pushed on everyone else. So, so are you saying that after Dune, is the book Dune God Emperor? What was the title of that one? God Emperor of Dune?
Tukar has no
After
memory
that
of it.
one, then the sons of Israel left?
Okay, take it in the chat.
Or sorry, but I'm having more fun talking about Dune.
Well, yeah, bring it. Type it in the chat. Ask
Yeah.
Tim the
Yeah,
question.
no, yeah, they're not metaphorical, they are real. They are actually the Jewish people. Sorry.
That's weird. That is so weird. Now I
It's a
feel like
very
I need
weird
to
twist.
read Dune just to under like. That's weird. Weird. And I'm guessing, Tim, your comment that what was it? Uh so here's the hot take. The pedophiles controlling all the cultural elites. That's the Bean Gesserit. I'm guessing this is also a Dune reference. Now I'm worried we're gonna
The
get
Bene
Dune
Gesserit,
reference.
yeah.
All
That's also a Dune reference, yes.
all right, getting back to the article. There's also the nature of the targets, where the pedophile conspiracies of the 1980s attacked the institutional emblems of feminist progress. The pedophile conspiracies of the 2010s attacked the cultural emblems of creeping cosmopolitanism. The ritual abuse of the 1980s supposedly happened in the suburbs, in state or state licensed institutions, such as schools and childcare facilities. Today, the abuse happens in business and cosmopolitan cities. Comet Ping Pong in the Chevy Chase neighborhood of DC is known as a welcoming space that regularly showcases progressive do-it-yourself artists and musicians. A tangible emblem, in the words of the University of New Haven sociology professor Jeffrey Debbies. Carl. Jeffrey Debbies Carl? of inclusivity, tolerance, and other progressive values that are threatening to the conspiracy-prone alt-right. How dare we have progressive values?
Sorry, there's a Chevy Chase neighborhood in DC?
You didn't know that? Yeah, Chevy Chase.
No?
I think I mostly know that because of Fallout 3. I think it's the only reason I know about that. Because one of the areas in Fallout 3 is Chevy Chase. British historian Norman Cohn, in his book Europe's Inner Demons, finds elements of pedophile conspiracies throughout history. In the 1st century BC, members of the Catalan conspiracy and an aristocratic plot to overthrow the Roman Republic supposedly swore an oath over the entrails of a boy and then ate them. Those Romans. Or Catalans. Because they're against the Roman Republic. And in the witch hunts of the 15th, 17th century, tens of thousands of people were tortured and killed over allegations that they performed ritual child murder, among other heinous acts. I mean, those were also claimed. I mean, we already sort of touched on that. But that was also claimed about the Jews with the blood libel. The conspiracy theories documented by Cohn are fundamentally political. The rituals they describe are the means by which a group of conspirators affirms its solidarity, he writes, with the ultimate goal of overthrowing an existing ruler or regime and to seize power. The mass witch hunts that follow are political too, based on the demonological obsessions of the intelligentsia. The history of American political reaction is full of sex demons. Jim Crow was buttressed by
Nice.
the sex demons?
Yeah.
We need more sex demons.
Have you ever read Patrick Rothfuss?
No.
The Name of the Wind ones?
Is this like fiction?
Yeah, it's a fantasy. There's two of them, and there's supposed to have been a third one for the past like 15 years or something. But the second one has like a 300-page section where the main character gets trapped in the realm of the goddess of like sex or like a sex fairy or something, and then she's gonna like have sex with him to death, and then instead of that happening, he has sex with her so good that she lets him live and go with like a blessing. And it's like a quarter of a like 1,300-page book. Like it's so fucking shitty. And this book is like supposed to be like the highest of like it's supposed to be like, whoa, like this is better than like
I think Tim is a fan.
everything.
You're breaking
like,
the
whoa.
heart in chat.
I'm sorry, Tim. That part like if it had just been like one chapter, that would be fine. But it was so fucking long. Like
I don't
sorry, that was
I don't read a lot of fantasy. Like I mostly stayed in the science fiction area, which is why it's like surprising I have not read Dune. I've like I've read
that's
tons of Arthur Clarke, Asimov, Philip K. Dick, all that stuff, but have not read Dune.
Jody, have you seen that there's a Foundation TV series on Apple TV?
No, is it good? I mean, if I haven't heard of it, that makes me nervous.
The trailer seemed interesting. Maybe we can watch it at the end of stream.
Sure. So yeah, American political reaction is full of sex demons, just full. Jim Crow was buttressed by myths about black male virility. Likewise, North Carolina's infamous bathroom bill was sold in part on the fear that predatory men would say they're transgender to gain access to women's bathrooms. Opponents of abortion rights continue to conjure gory fantasies of promiscuous women committing infanticide, an incitement that Trump turned into an applause line in an April rally. There was somebody who was responding to one of my pro-choice things that I posted on Twitter, was that like, they were like, I'm pro-choice. He was just like, we should be worried though about people who like keep on getting abortions over and over again. And my response to them was always like, why though? It's like, if you're pro-choice, why are you worried if someone like has 20 abortions? Like, I don't know. there is like an element here where it's like still like deep inside these people like feel like it's a negative thing that you shouldn't be doing. So it's like they can understand in some cases why you might be able to do it or whatnot, but then it's like if it happens over and over again, then this is just bad somehow. Where it's like it's not infanticide though. It's really just a medical procedure. I would not complain if anyone got like necessary heart surgery like 10 times. In this way, pedophile conspiracies act as a sort of propaganda of the counter-revolution, a funhouse reflection of the real threats to the social order. This is what connects QAnon and Pizzagate to Mcmartin, to the witch hunts of the Middle Ages, to the dawn of major religions. The demons may take different forms, but the conspiracy is basically the same. Our house is under attack. Decay of morals grows from day to day, goes one despairing account. A secret cabal is wreaking havoc across the land. The man complains to his friend. Its members recognize one another by secret signs and marks, and everywhere they introduce a kind of religion of lust that subverts ordinary fornication. There's a rumor that they worship the private parts of their director and high priest. Maybe the rumor is false, but such suspicions naturally attach to their secret and nocturnal rites. I think maybe some of these people just need to have some fun sex. Fun consensual sex. And relax. In this dialogue written by Marcus Minucius Felix in the 2nd century, the Roman pagan Caecilius, I'm brutalizing these Roman names, pagan Caecilius Natalis speaks of Christians the way Pizzagators describe John Podesta and his fellow liberal elite. Natalis is particularly incensed.
Cecilius.
Cecilius? Cecilius.
Like Cecil.
Cecilius. Okay.
Yeah. Haha, you're so Sicily.
Natalis is particularly incensed by the cult's initiation ritual. The details are as revolting as they are notorious. New members are initiated into the cult, he reports, by stabbing and killing an infant who has been coated in dough. That's it.
Was that Pizzagate again?
That was Pizzagate in the 2nd century. No, that was coated in dough.
Coated in dough for pizza.
Well, this was before pizza because the Romans had not discovered tomatoes back then. They had to brutalize some indigenous people in South America before that happened.
Jody, not knowing his history of pizza, that original Italian pizza had a pesto sauce, not a fucking tomato sauce. But no. Jody, fake pizza fan.
That's me, fake pizza fan over here. Yeah. Listen, Pete, there was no true pizza until we had Chicago deep dish, okay?
Hello, my rebels. Hello, my rebels. I'm a good boy. I'm a weirdo.